For years, an entire town trusted a man who never went to medical school. They believed he was a trained professional, a dedicated doctor, and a respected member of the community. They followed his advice. They trusted his diagnoses. Some even trusted him with their lives. What none of them knew was that everything about him was a lie. His name was Ferdinand Waldo Demara Jr., and he would become known as one of the greatest impostors in American history. Unlike many criminals, Demara did not use violence. He did not steal money directly. He did something far more dangerous. He stole identities, professions, and trust. He became a doctor without studying medicine, a teacher without formal training, a lawyer without a law degree, a priest without theological education. Again and again he convinced entire communities that he was someone he was not. To understand how he managed to deceive so many people for so long, we must begin at the beginning. Ferdinand Demara was born in 1921 in Massachusetts, into a working-class family. From an early age, he displayed unusual intelligence. Teachers noticed that he learned quickly and had an exceptional memory. He could read something once and remember it for years. He absorbed information effortlessly, but alongside this intelligence was a deep dissatisfaction with ordinary life. He did not want to be average. He did not want to follow rules. He did not want to wait. He wanted status. He wanted admiration. He wanted importance. And he wanted it immediately. As a teenager, Demara became fascinated by institutions that offered authority: the military, the church, universities, and professional organizations. These environments represented power and respect. Wearing a uniform or holding a title instantly changed how people treated you. He realized that identity itself could be a tool. While other young men focused on building careers step by step, Demara searched for shortcuts. He joined religious groups, then left. He enrolled in academic programs, then dropped out. He entered military service, then deserted. Again and again, he abandoned paths that required long-term commitment. He lacked patience for slow progress. Instead, he began experimenting with something far more dangerous: reinvention. He learned how to create new identities. He studied how documents looked. He learned how institutions worked. He observed how professionals spoke and behaved, and then he began copying them. In the 1940s, Demara started assuming false identities. He forged diplomas. He invented references. He created entire fictional backgrounds. Each time, he refined his technique. Each failure became a lesson. Each success gave him confidence. What made Demara especially dangerous was not just his willingness to lie. It was his ability to learn extremely fast. When he entered a new profession, he studied obsessively. He read textbooks. He memorized terminology. He observed experts. Within weeks, he could speak convincingly about complex subjects. He did not need years of training. He needed weeks of preparation. And for most people, that was enough. His most infamous transformation occurred in the early 1950s, when he joined the Canadian Navy under a false name. He presented himself as a trained physician and was assigned as a medical officer aboard a naval ship. Incredibly, no thorough background check was performed. His documents looked real. His confidence was convincing. And the military bureaucracy failed. Suddenly, a man with no medical degree was responsible for the health of hundreds of sailors. At first, Demara was terrified. He had read medical books, he had studied anatomy, but he had never treated real patients. One mistake could expose him. One wrong decision could kill someone. But instead of quitting, he adapted. He requested medical manuals. He studied them intensely. He memorized procedures. He learned by observation. Soon, real emergencies began. During the Korean War, wounded soldiers were brought to the ship. Some had life-threatening injuries. There was no time to wait for specialists. Demara had to act. Using textbooks and quick thinking, he performed surgeries. And shockingly, they worked. Patients survived. Wounds healed. Lives were saved. The fake doctor had successfully operated on real human beings. News of his medical skills spread. He was praised by superiors. He became respected. Sailors trusted him completely. To them, he was a hero. Behind the scenes, however, Demara was living in constant fear. Every successful surgery increased his reputation, but also increased the risk of discovery. If anyone examined his credentials closely, everything would collapse. Eventually, his secret was exposed when someone recognized him from his past. Authorities investigated. His true identity was revealed. The scandal made international headlines. The idea that an untrained man had served as a naval surgeon shocked the public. But instead of ending his career as an imposter, it only made him more famous and more confident. After leaving the Navy, Demara continued reinventing himself. He became a teacher, then a prison warden, then a counselor, then a hospital administrator. Each time he entered a new town and created a new persona. Communities welcomed him. Institutions trusted him. People believed in him. In one small American town, he became known as a respected doctor. Residents relied on him. Families brought their children to him. Elderly patients followed his advice. For years, no one questioned his background. He seemed knowledgeable. He seemed caring. He seemed legitimate, but once again, it was all a lie. After the naval scandal, many believed Ferdinand Demara's life of deception would finally end. His name had appeared in newspapers. His photograph had circulated publicly. The world now knew that the so-called naval surgeon had never attended medical school. Authorities questioned him. Institutions distanced themselves. The humiliation should have been enough to stop him. But for Demara, exposure was not defeat. It was reinvention. What made him extraordinary was not simply his ability to assume false identities, but his refusal to be defined by failure. While most imposters would disappear after public exposure, Demara studied his own mistakes. He analyzed how he had been discovered. He adjusted his methods. He learned to avoid patterns. And then he started again. He understood something profound about human psychology. Most people do not verify confidence. They respond to it. If you speak with certainty, if you wear the right uniform, if you carry the right posture, most doors will open. And so, he returned. In small communities across North America, Demara began assuming new identities. Sometimes he claimed to be a teacher, other times a psychologist. In certain towns, he presented himself as a hospital administrator. Each time he entered with calm authority. He spoke fluently. He referenced complex material. He impressed local leaders. What is perhaps most unsettling is that in many of these roles he performed competently. As a teacher, students praised him. As an administrator, staff respected him. As a counselor, patients found him thoughtful. Demara possessed an extraordinary memory and the ability to absorb information rapidly. He would isolate himself for days, reading manuals, memorizing procedures, and rehearsing terminology. When he re-emerged, he appeared fully trained. In one particular American town, he once again assumed a medical-related role. The community welcomed him warmly. Residents saw him as intelligent and compassionate. He attended church. He spoke politely. He seemed dedicated. For months, perhaps longer, no one suspected anything. Parents brought their children to him. Elderly citizens relied on his advice. Local officials respected him. He blended seamlessly into daily life. And that is what makes his story so psychologically disturbing. He was not reckless, he was not chaotic, he was controlled. Demara understood that the key to deception was moderation. He never appeared overly ambitious. He avoided drawing unnecessary attention. He maintained just enough authority to be respected, but not enough to invite scrutiny. Yet the deeper truth was more complex. Unlike many fraudsters motivated purely by money, Demara appeared driven by something else. Identity hunger. He wanted to be someone important. He wanted admiration. He wanted to experience what it felt like to hold power, even if temporarily. Some psychologists later speculated that he suffered from a deep-rooted inferiority complex. Others suggested narcissistic traits. Some believed he simply enjoyed the intellectual challenge of beating institutions at their own systems. Whatever the explanation, the pattern repeated. Eventually, once again, someone recognized him. A photograph, a newspaper article, a faint memory. Investigations began quietly. Authorities cross-checked documents. Background inconsistencies emerged. The illusion collapsed. When confronted, Demara rarely reacted with aggression. Instead, he often admitted the deception calmly. He spoke intelligently about his motivations. He expressed regret without panic. In some cases, those who had worked with him felt conflicted. They had respected him. They had trusted him. And despite the lie, many acknowledged that he had performed competently. Moral ambiguity complicated public perception. Was he a criminal? A genius? A fraud? A man searching for identity? Newspapers labeled him the Great Impostor. The nickname stuck. His story fascinated the American public. Magazine articles were written, interviews were conducted. His life became the subject of books. He even cooperated with writers who chronicled his experiences. Rather than hiding from attention, he seemed to embrace it. Despite the fame, his pattern never fully stopped. He continued drifting between identities for years, though under increasing scrutiny. The world had become more cautious. Institutions strengthened verification processes. Background checks improved. His opportunities narrowed. Over time, the legend of Ferdinand Demara grew larger than the man himself. He had impersonated a naval surgeon, a prison warden, a teacher, a hospital administrator, a psychologist, a religious official. And in each role he managed to function convincingly. But the cost of such a life is isolation. Demara never built a stable career, never built long-term trust, never lived authentically. Every relationship was built on borrowed identity. Every success carried expiration. Every community he joined would eventually feel betrayed. As years passed, the thrill of deception faded. The world changed. Systems improved. His ability to reinvent himself diminished. The spotlight that once fascinated him slowly dimmed. In 1982, Ferdinand Waldo Demara Jr. died quietly, far from the dramatic headlines that once defined him. No grand scandal, no final exposure, just the end of a life built on illusion. His story remains one of the most extraordinary cases of identity fraud in modern history, not because of violence, not because of greed, but because of audacity. He proved that institutions can be fooled. He proved that confidence can override credentials. He proved that people often trust appearance over verification. And perhaps most unsettling of all, he demonstrated how fragile identity truly is. When someone wears a uniform, when someone speaks with authority, when someone presents documents and degrees, we assume legitimacy. But Demara showed that legitimacy can be manufactured. His life forces uncomfortable questions. How well do we truly verify those we trust? How easily can systems be manipulated? How much of authority is performance? For the towns that welcomed him, the betrayal was real. Even if he performed competently, the foundation of trust had been false. And trust, once broken, is rarely restored. The story of Ferdinand Demara is not simply about one man's deception. It is about the human desire to be seen, admired, and important. It is about institutions that assume honesty, and it is about the thin line between brilliance and fraud. In the end, he did not destroy lives in the way violent criminals do. But he did something equally profound. He revealed vulnerabilities in systems designed to protect society. He exposed how easily confidence can replace credentials. And he left behind a legacy that continues to fascinate historians and psychologists alike. Because sometimes the most dangerous deception is not one built on chaos. It is one built on calm, intelligence, and confidence. And that is what made Ferdinand Waldo Demara Jr. so unforgettable. And now, the question remains. How many people like Ferdinand Demara are still out there, hiding behind fake identities, fake credentials, and carefully constructed lies? How many systems are still vulnerable to confidence instead of truth? His story reminds us that appearances can be deceiving, that authority can be fabricated, and that trust must always be questioned. If this story shocked you, if it made you think, and if you want to discover more real cases like this, make sure to subscribe to this channel. Here we uncover the stories that were never meant to be told. Leave your thoughts in the comments and stay with us for the next true story, because the next one may be even more disturbing.